The calm before the storm. The galaxy was at peace. After years of war and conflict, the Allied worlds finally signed a treaty. It was a promise of safety, of unity, and of prosperity. On the planet Orithia, Chancellor Valoria stood on her balcony, watching the grand celebration below. Colorful lights danced in the sky, and the people cheered with joy. Laughter filled the air. Music echoed through the streets. They were happy. They believed they were safe. Valoria smiled softly, feeling the warmth of hope in her heart. The galaxy was finally united. There were no more threats, no more enemies. The Council had assured her that all borders were secure. Scouts had reported no unusual activity. Everything was peaceful. Orithia was safe. But far away in the cold darkness of space, something was moving. A fleet of ships, massive and silent, drifted through the void. Their dark metal hulls blended into the shadows, making them almost invisible. There were no signals, no lights, no noise. They moved like ghosts, creeping closer to the galaxy's borders. It was the Deathworlder fleet. They were coming, and no one knew. On the outpost near the border, Admiral Karen sat in his command chair, half asleep. It was just another boring night. There hadn't been any action in months. He sipped his cold coffee, his eyes heavy with sleep. Maybe peace is real after all, he muttered, letting out a yawn. Suddenly, his scanner beeped. Once, twice. Then it stopped. Karen's eyes snapped open. He leaned forward, his fingers dancing over the controls. The screen showed strange signals, flickering in and out. It was faint, almost like a whisper, but it was there. "What is that?" he whispered, his heart beating faster. He tried to zoom in, but the signals disappeared. The screen went blank. He frowned, tapping the monitor. Must be a glitch, he thought. But just as he leaned back, the signals returned, stronger this time. Karen's heart skipped a beat. The shapes were huge, moving fast and silent. There were dozens of them. No, hundreds. Panic rushed through him. He activated the communication line. "This is Admiral Karen. We have unidentified ships near the border. Requesting backup." But there was only static. Confused, he tried again. "Command, do you read me? Unknown fleet approaching. We need reinforcements." Still nothing. The communication lines were dead. Karen's hands trembled. How was that possible? The system was secure, protected by the best technology in the galaxy. He stared at the screen, his blood turning cold. The ships were getting closer, their formation tight and perfect. They moved like shadows, invisible to all normal scanners. But they were real. They were here. He recognized the shape of the ships, the cold, dark metal that seemed to drink in the light. He had heard stories about them, whispers of a legendary race from a distant, deadly world. A race that could survive anything. The Deathworlders, creatures from planets so harsh that no other species could live there. Beings that were stronger, faster, and more dangerous than any known enemy. But they're just myths, Karen told himself, his voice shaking. Legends told to scare children. Stories from a time long forgotten. But as he watched the fleet move closer, his body froze with fear. The legends were real. The Deathworlders were real. And they were coming. He slammed his fist on the emergency alarm, the sirens echoing through the outpost. Red lights flashed, and his crew rushed to their stations. "Prepare for battle," he shouted, his voice echoing with urgency. "We are under attack." His heart raced as the outpost's defense systems powered up. Cannons aimed at the approaching fleet, targeting the massive ships. But as Karen watched the screens, he noticed something terrifying. The Deathworlder ships were not slowing down. They were not turning away. They were charging straight at the outpost. "They're not afraid," Karen whispered, fear tightening in his chest. He realized the truth. The Deathworlders didn't see them as a threat. They didn't see them as equals. To them, This outpost was nothing but an obstacle, and they were about to destroy it. The celebration on Orethia continued, the people laughing and dancing, unaware of the danger. Chancellor Valoria looked up at the sky, her heart full of hope. She didn't know that far above, in the cold, empty space, death was approaching. The calm before the storm was about to end, and nothing would ever be the same again. Admiral Kieran's heart raced as he watched the dark fleet move closer. The Deathworlder ships were massive, their black metal hulls reflecting no light. They were like shadows, silent and deadly, creeping through the void. Their formation was perfect, tight, and disciplined. There was no hesitation, no fear. They were hunters, and the outpost was their prey. "Activate all defense systems," Kieran shouted, his voice echoing through the command room. Red lights flashed, alarms blaring as his crew scrambled to their stations. Cannons powered up, targeting the incoming fleet. Shields were raised, glowing blue around the outpost. The soldiers' faces were pale, their eyes wide with fear. They had never seen anything like this. Kieran's fingers danced over the controls, trying to send a distress signal. But every time he tried, he was met with silence. The communication lines were dead, cut off by the enemy. It was as if the Deathworlders knew exactly how to block their signals. It was too perfect, too precise. They were not just powerful, they were intelligent. His eyes locked onto the screen. The fleet was getting closer, moving with terrifying speed. Kieran felt a chill run down his spine. How were they so fast? Even the most advanced ships in the galaxy couldn't move like that. They were breaking all known limits. It was impossible, and yet it was happening. He tried to calculate their trajectory, hoping they would change direction. Maybe they were just passing by. Maybe they didn't see the outpost as a threat. But as the ships aligned themselves, their cannons glowing with dark energy, Kieran's hope shattered. They were aiming right at him. "They're preparing to fire," shouted one of his officers, panic in her voice. The screen showed the cannons charging, dark energy swirling like black lightning. Kieran's mouth went dry. He had never seen weapons like that before. This was technology far beyond anything in the galaxy. What were these creatures? "Open fire," he commanded, his voice firm despite the fear in his heart. The outpost's cannons roared, bright beams of energy shooting towards the Deathworlder fleet. The void lit up with explosions as the beams hit their targets. But nothing happened. Kieran's eyes widened in horror. The beams were absorbed by the enemy ships, disappearing into their dark hulls. It was like they were eating the energy, growing stronger. "Impossible," he whispered, his hands trembling. Nothing could withstand that kind of firepower. Nothing but them. The Deathworlder fleet didn't even slow down. They moved through the blasts as if they were nothing. Their cannons glowed brighter, aimed directly at the outpost. Kieran's chest tightened. He knew what was coming. "Brace for impact," he shouted, gripping his chair as the enemy fired. Black beams of energy shot out, faster than light. They smashed into the outpost's shields, shattering them instantly. The entire station shook, metal creaking under the pressure. Consoles exploded, sending sparks and smoke everywhere. Soldiers screamed as they were thrown off their feet. Kieran gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay focused. "Divert all power to the weapons. Fire everything we've got." His crew obeyed, launching missiles and energy blasts at the fleet. The void was filled with explosions, light flashing in the darkness. But nothing touched the Deathworlder ships. They moved too fast, dodging every attack with unnatural precision. "They're toying with us," Kieran realized, his blood turning cold. They weren't just attacking. They were testing them, studying their defenses. It was a game to them, a cruel, calculated game. And they were winning. Another blast hit the outpost, tearing through the outer hull. The station trembled, lights flickering as systems failed. Kieran could feel the air getting colder as the atmosphere leaked out. They were losing. They couldn't win this fight. Not against them. He knew he had to warn the council, to tell him about this new enemy. But the communication lines were still dead, blocked by the Deathworlders. There was no way to call for help. They were alone, surrounded by shadows in the void. Karen's eyes hardened. If they were going to die, they would die fighting. "Prepare the escape pods. Get as many people out as you can," he ordered, his voice firm. "I'll hold them off." His crew looked at him in shock, but they obeyed. Soldiers ran to the escape pods, helping the wounded. Karen stayed at his post, his fingers flying over the controls. He fired the last of the missiles, aiming straight at the largest ship. The explosion lit up the void, but when the light faded, the ship was untouched. It moved through the smoke, its cannons charging again. Karen stared at the screen, his heart heavy. They were unstoppable. They were monsters from a world of death, and they were coming for all of them. As the outpost shook under another blast, Karen closed his eyes. The galaxy was not ready for this. They had believed in peace, in safety. They had thought they were safe. But the Deathworlders were here, and they were going to change everything. The storm had arrived, and no one was prepared for its wrath. The outpost was falling apart. Metal beams twisted and groaned as the hull buckled under the relentless assault. Fires raged through the corridors, smoke filling the air. Emergency lights flashed red, casting eerie shadows on the faces of the panicked soldiers. Yet Admiral Karen stood firm, his eyes locked on the screen. The Deathworlder fleet surrounded them, dark and merciless, circling like predators around wounded prey. He refused to surrender. He wouldn't let them win so easily. "Redirect power to the forward cannons," Karen commanded, his voice sharp. "Focus fire on their lead ship." His crew hesitated, faces pale with fear. They knew the truth. Nothing they had could penetrate those ships. But Karen's eyes burned with defiance. "Do it," he barked, and they obeyed. The outpost's cannons roared, firing beams of bright energy. They struck the lead Deathworlder ship head-on, wrapping it in flames. For a brief moment, hope flickered in Kieran's chest. But as the fire died down, his heart sank. The ship was untouched, its dark hull absorbing the energy like a void. It didn't even slow down. "They're invincible," whispered one of his officers, her voice trembling. Despair spread through the room like poison. How could they fight something that couldn't be harmed? Kieran's jaw tightened. Invincible or not, they can bleed. He slammed his fist on the console. "Target their engines. Slow them down." More beams fired, aimed at the rear of the enemy ships. But the Deathworlders were fast, too fast. They moved with unnatural speed, dodging every attack with inhuman precision. It was as if they could predict their moves before they made them. How are they doing that? Kieran wondered, his mind racing. These weren't just advanced ships. The pilots were skilled, their maneuvers flawless. It was like fighting shadows, slipping through their fingers. The lead ship responded, its cannons charging with black energy. Kieran's eyes widened. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted, but it was too late. The dark beams fired, striking the outpost with terrifying force. The impact tore through the shields, ripping apart the outer hull. The entire station shook, throwing soldiers off their feet. Kieran's head slammed against the console, pain exploding behind his eyes. He tasted blood but forced himself to stand. The command room was in chaos. Sparks flew from broken consoles, and smoke filled the air. But the worst was the silence. The humming of the shields was gone. They were defenseless. "Admiral, our shields are down. We're exposed." A soldier shouted, panic in his voice. Kieran's heart pounded. One more hit, and they would be destroyed. He needed to think, fast. His eyes fell on the escape pod controls. There was still a chance to save his people. "Begin evacuation. Get everyone off this station," he ordered, his voice firm. "But sir," one of his officers began, but Kieran cut him off. "That's an order. I'll cover your escape." He turned to the weapons console, fingers flying over the controls. If he could keep the Deathworlders busy, maybe some of them could get away. The outpost's remaining cannons fired, a barrage of energy aimed at the fleet. It was a desperate, reckless attack. But Kieran didn't care. He was buying time, even if it cost him his life. Escape pods launched from the outpost, tiny ships shooting into the void. Kieran watched them go, relief washing over him. At least some would survive. Maybe they could warn the Council, tell them about this new threat. But the Deathworlders were not merciful. The lead ship's cannons charged again, dark energy swirling with deadly intent. They aimed at the fleeing pods, ready to wipe them out. "No," Kieran shouted, his chest tightening. He fired the outpost's remaining missiles, trying to draw their attention. "Come on. Look at me. I'm the one you want." For a moment, the lead ship hesitated, its cannons shifting towards the outpost. Kieran's heart pounded. "That's right. Come on." He fired again, another desperate volley. The Deathworlder ship turned, its dark hull gleaming as it aimed at him. Kieran met its gaze, his eyes blazing with defiance. "You want to fight? Then fight me." The enemy fired, beams of black energy tearing through space. Kieran watched them come, his hands gripping the console. There was no escape, no way out, but he wouldn't look away. He would face them, unbroken. The beams struck the outpost, ripping through metal and flame. The station shook violently, tearing apart. Kieran was thrown back, his vision blurring. The last thing he saw was the lead ship, still untouched, still advancing. The screen flickered, static filling the air. And then, the outpost went silent. The Deathworlder fleet moved on, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. The darkness closed in around them, shadows in the void, and they showed no mercy. The escape pods drifted through the void, tiny beacons of life surrounded by darkness. Inside one of them, Lieutenant Mara's hands trembled as she gripped the controls. Her heart raced, eyes fixed on the shattered remains of the outpost. Flames and debris floated in space, all that was left of their home. Admiral Kieran was gone. Their shields were destroyed, and the Deathworlder fleet was still out there, hunting them. Her pod shuddered as the engines struggled, barely keeping them moving. "Come on, don't fail me now," she whispered, glancing at the fuel gauge. It was dangerously low. They wouldn't get far. Beside her, Private Tali hugged her knees, tears streaming down her face. "They destroyed everything. How can we fight something like that?" Her voice was small, broken. Mara felt the same fear, the same helplessness. But she couldn't give in. "Not yet. We fight by surviving," she said, forcing strength into her voice. "As long as we live, there's hope. We have to warn the Council. They need to know what's coming." Tali looked up, her eyes red. "Do you think they'll believe us? No one's ever seen ships like that before. Invincible, unstoppable." Mara's jaw tightened. "They'll have to believe us. We'll make them understand." She turned back to the controls, her mind racing. If they could reach the nearest relay station, they could send a distress signal. It was a slim chance, but it was all they had. Suddenly, the pod sensors blared, a warning flashing on the screen. Mara's blood ran cold. A Deathworlder ship was approaching, its dark hull gleaming against the starlight. It moved with deadly grace, closing in fast. "They found us," Tali screamed, panic filling her voice. "We're going to die." Mara's hands flew over the controls, forcing the engines to their limit. "Not yet. Hold on." The pod lurched forward, engines whining in protest. But the Deathworlder ship was faster, its cannons charging with dark energy. Mara's heart pounded. There was no way out, no way to escape. Her fingers tightened on the controls, her mind screaming in defiance. She wouldn't go down without a fight. But then, another warning flashed on the screen. This one different. Mara's eyes widened in shock. A new ship was approaching. But it wasn't a Deathworlder. Its design was ancient, its hull scarred by time. Yet it moved with power, with purpose. It fired a beam of pure light, striking the Deathworlder ship with incredible force. The enemy's shields flared, struggling against the attack. For the first time, the Deathworlder ship hesitated, thrown off balance. Mara's mouth fell open. What? Who is that? The mysterious ship advanced, firing again. Its cannons roared with ancient fury, beams of energy slicing through the darkness. The Deathworlder ship staggered, its hull cracking. It was the first sign of weakness Mara had seen. They can be hurt. They're not invincible, she realized, hope igniting in her chest. The Deathworlder ship turned, retreating into the void. It fled. It actually fled. Mara's eyes locked on the mysterious ship. It hung there in space, silent and powerful. Its design was unlike anything she'd seen before. Alien, but familiar, almost human. A message flashed on her screen, text in an ancient language. But as she stared at it, the words changed, shifting into something she could read. Stay alive. We are coming. Her heart skipped a beat. Who were they? Allies? Enemies? She didn't know. But one thing was certain. The Deathworlders weren't unbeatable. There was hope. The mysterious ship vanished, its engines leaving trails of light as it disappeared into the stars. Mara sat in stunned silence, her mind reeling. She didn't understand what she had just witnessed, but she knew one thing. The fight wasn't over. She turned to Tali, who stared at the screen in shock. We need to get to the relay station, now more than ever. Tali nodded, wiping her tears. Determination returned to her eyes. Right. We need to tell them. About the Deathworlders. And about them. Mara steeled herself, hands firm on the controls. Hold on. This isn't the end. She fired up the engines, setting a course for the relay station. Hope flickered in the darkness as they sped through space, leaving the wreckage behind. The galaxy was in danger. But maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone. Mara's escape pod docked at the relay station, its hull scorched and battered. She stumbled out, legs shaking, Tali close behind. The station was silent, its corridors empty. Shadows danced along the walls, the air heavy with tension. Where is everyone? Tali whispered, eyes wide with fear. Mara didn't answer. Her hand tightened around her blaster as they moved through the hallways, senses on high alert. Something was wrong. The lights flickered, casting eerie glows. The air felt cold, unnaturally so. They reached the control room, the heart of the relay station. It was a mess. Consoles were shattered, wires hung loose, and scorch marks covered the walls. Mara's stomach turned. A battle had happened here, recently. Tali gasped, pointing to a figure slumped against the console. It was a technician, his uniform stained with blood. His eyes were open, frozen in terror. Mara's breath caught. No, they got here first. She rushed to the console, fingers flying over the controls. The screen flickered to life, displaying garbled messages and corrupted data. But one file remained intact, marked urgent. Mara opened it, her heart racing. A video played. The technician appeared on the screen, his face pale and eyes frantic. This is Relay Station Echo 7. We're under attack. They came out of nowhere, ships unlike anything we've seen. Our weapons did nothing. They walked through our shields like they were nothing. He looked over his shoulder, fear twisting his face. They're hunting us, not just to kill, but to erase. They don't want anyone knowing they were here. A loud crash echoed through the video. The technician's eyes widened. If anyone sees this, warn the council. They're not invaders. They're executioners, and they're looking for something. Something ancient. Something we thought was just a myth. The screen went dark, the video cutting off abruptly. Mara's blood ran cold. The Deathworlders weren't just attacking. They were searching for something. But what? Tali's voice shook. What could they be looking for? And why would they kill everyone just to find it? Mara stared at the ruined console, her mind spinning. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's important enough to start a war over. She replayed the technician's words in her mind. Something ancient. Something we thought was just a myth. She remembered the mysterious ship that saved them. Its ancient design, its overwhelming power. Could it be connected? Were the Deathworlders hunting it? Before she could piece it together, the station's alarm blared, red lights flashing. Mara's heart skipped a beat. The sensors showed multiple ships approaching. Deathworlder ships. They're here, Tali shouted, panic returning to her voice. They're coming to finish the job. Mara's hands flew over the controls, initiating the distress signal. I'm sending the message. The Council has to know about this. The console beeped, data streaming to the nearest jump relay. Message sent. But as the signal transmitted, the station shook violently. Explosions echoed through the corridors as the Deathworlder ships fired, tearing through the station's shields. Mara's eyes widened. They're trying to destroy the relay. They don't want the message getting out. Tali grabbed her arm. We have to go. We can't fight them. Mara knew she was right. They were outnumbered, outgunned. The Deathworlders wouldn't stop until every trace of this place was gone. She pulled Tali towards the emergency exit, her heart pounding. But as they ran, the floor shook, metal groaning under the assault. A burst of energy tore through the walls, fire and debris raining down. Mara shielded her face, pain lancing through her arm as shrapnel sliced her skin. Tali screamed, stumbling as the station lurched. Mara, I can't. Mara grabbed her, dragging her to her feet. Keep moving. We're not dying here. They raced through the crumbling corridors, the station collapsing around them. Explosions roared, the lights flickering wildly. The exit was just ahead, the docking bay within reach. But before they could reach it, a Deathworlder appeared, its armor gleaming in the shadows. Its eyes glowed with cruel intelligence, its weapon aimed at them. Mara's blood ran cold. There was no cover, no escape. The Deathworlder's lips curled into a snarl as it prepared to fire. Mara's fingers tightened on her blaster. She had one shot, one chance. Her eyes locked on the alien's chest, aiming for the gap in its armor. Her heart raced. Time seemed to slow. Then, a blast of energy hit the Deathworlder from behind, disintegrating it instantly. Mara's jaw dropped. Another figure stepped out of the shadows, its form humanoid, but not quite human. Its armor was ancient, its eyes glowing with blue light. It looked at Mara and Tali, its expression unreadable. Then it spoke, its voice echoing through their minds. Come with me if you want to live. Mara couldn't breathe. Who was this stranger? An ally? An enemy? She didn't know. But she did know one thing. The Deathworlders were hunting them, and this mysterious being was their only chance of survival. She looked at Tali, who was frozen in shock. Then she made her decision. Let's go. They followed the stranger into the darkness, the station collapsing behind them. The truth was still out there, hidden and dangerous. But they weren't alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, they had found a way to fight back. Mara and Tali followed the mysterious figure through the crumbling corridors of the relay station. Explosions rocked the walls, debris falling around them. But the stranger moved with purpose, dodging falling metal and navigating the chaos with ease. Mara's mind raced. Who was this person? They looked humanoid but moved with unnatural speed and grace. Their armor was ancient, covered in symbols she didn't recognize. And their weapon? It was unlike anything she had ever seen. It hummed with power, glowing with blue energy. The stranger led them to a hidden hangar, concealed behind a holographic wall. Inside, a sleek ship awaited, its design unlike any vessel Mara had seen. It was elegant, its hull shimmering with a metallic sheen that shifted colors. Tali's eyes widened. What is this place? And who are you? The stranger turned, their face partially hidden by a helmet. Their voice echoed, deep and resonant. I am the last of the Arcanists, the guardians of the ancient knowledge, and you are in great danger. Mara's breath caught. The Arcanists, that's just a legend, a lost civilization that vanished thousands of years ago. The stranger's eyes glowed softly. Legends are often born from truth. The Arcanists did not vanish. We were hunted by the very beings who now threaten your galaxy. Tali's voice trembled. The Deathworlders, they hunted your people. The stranger nodded, a shadow passing over their face. They are not conquerors. They are erasers. They destroy civilizations and erase their histories, leaving no trace. My people were their first victims. We stood against them and paid the price. Mara's heart pounded. That's why they attacked the relay station. They didn't want anyone to know they were here. They're trying to erase you. Again. The stranger's expression hardened. They will do more than that. They will erase your entire civilization if they find what they are looking for. Mara felt a chill. What are they looking for? The stranger hesitated, then answered. The key of eternity. An ancient artifact capable of bending time and space. It was created by the Arcanists to safeguard the galaxy from destruction. But in the wrong hands, it could end everything. Tali gasped. That's why they're attacking. They want this key. But why? The stranger's eyes darkened. To rewrite history. To erase every enemy they've ever faced. To conquer not just space, but time itself. Mara felt a wave of dread. If the Deathworlders got their hands on this artifact, they could wipe out entire civilizations before they were even born. They could become unstoppable. The station shook violently, another blast tearing through the walls. The stranger's voice became urgent. We must leave. The Deathworlders will not stop until this station is dust, and they will hunt you now too. You've seen too much. Mara looked at Tali, fear in her eyes. They were now targets of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. There was no going back. The stranger activated the ship, its engines humming with a strange melodic sound. The hangar doors opened, revealing the chaos outside. Deathworlder ships circled, firing relentlessly. Mara hesitated. Why are you helping us? The stranger looked at her, their eyes filled with ancient sorrow. Because your fight is now my fight, and because you remind me of those I failed to save. Before Mara could respond, the stranger guided them onto the ship. The doors sealed, the interior glowing with soft blue light. The controls were alien, yet intuitive. The ship felt alive, responding to the stranger's touch with a graceful hum. Tali stared in awe. This technology, it's beyond anything we have. How? The stranger's voice was distant. It is a remnant of my people, one of the last, a weapon and a guardian. The ship lifted off, its movement smooth and fluid. It dodged the Deathworlder attacks with ease, dancing through the chaos. Mara watched the screens, her heart pounding as they weaved through the enemy fleet. One of the Deathworlder ships fired a massive blast, the energy beam crackling with destructive power. Mara's eyes widened. Look out. But the stranger didn't flinch. They pressed a button, and the ship shimmered, phasing out of reality. The blast passed through them harmlessly, the ship reappearing behind the enemy vessel. Tali's jaw dropped. It can phase through attacks. How is that possible? The stranger's voice was calm. The Arcanists mastered space-time manipulation. It was our greatest achievement, and our greatest curse. The Deathworlders feared it. That's why they hunted us. They navigated through the fleet, evading every attack with precision. Mara's fear began to fade, replaced by awe. This ship, it was a relic of a lost civilization, a weapon beyond imagination. But as they broke through the enemy lines, the stranger's voice grew grim. This ship can't protect you forever. The Deathworlders will hunt you now. They won't stop until they find the key. Mara's resolve hardened. Then we have to find it first. If they want it so badly, we can't let them have it. The stranger looked at her, a spark of hope flickering in their eyes. You are brave, just like they were. Maybe there's still hope. Tali gripped her seat, determination replacing her fear. We'll fight. We'll find this key. And we'll stop them. The stranger's voice was solemn. Then prepare yourselves. You are now part of a war that began long before your world was born. A war that will decide the fate of every living being. Mara looked out at the stars, her heart pounding. They were heading into the unknown, hunted by an unstoppable enemy. But they weren't alone. And now, they had a weapon that could change everything. The ancient ship hummed, its engines glowing with ethereal light. The journey had begun, and there was no turning back. The ancient ship burst out of hyperspace, emerging above a planet shrouded in swirling clouds. Lightning crackled across the atmosphere, illuminating the colossal structure hovering above the surface. It was a Deathworlder command ship, larger than any vessel Mara had ever seen. Its dark, angular design radiated power, and its cannons glowed ominously, ready to fire. Mara's heart raced as the stranger guided their ship closer, cloaked from enemy sensors. The ancient vessel moved with elegance, its engines whisper-quiet. But Mara knew the danger was real. One wrong move, and they'd be obliterated. Tali's voice trembled. That thing, it's massive. How are we supposed to fight that? The stranger's eyes were fixed on the screen, determination etched into their face. We don't fight it head-on. We strike from within. Mara's eyes widened. You're planning to board that thing? Are you insane? The stranger's gaze was steely. It's the only way. The key of eternity is aboard that ship. If they activate it, they'll rewrite history. Every world, every life. Erased. Tali swallowed hard. But how do we stop them? The stranger's expression softened, with hope, with courage, and with the last weapon of the Arcanist. They reached the command ship's hangar, slipping through its shields undetected. Mara marveled at the ancient technology that cloaked them from the Deathworlder sensors. It was like magic, bending light and energy around them. The ship touched down, its ramp lowering with a hiss. The stranger stood up, their armor gleaming with ancient power. They handed Mara and Tali small devices, circular and glowing. Mara frowned. What are these? Energy shields. They'll protect you from the Deathworlder's weapons. For a while. But don't rely on them too much. Stay close, stay quiet, and trust me. Mara looked at Tali, fear and resolve mixing in her eyes. Ready? Tali took a deep breath. Not even a little. But let's do this. They followed the stranger into the colossal halls of the Deathworlder ship. It was dark and cold, the walls made of black metal that seemed to absorb light. Shadows danced around them, and a low hum echoed through the corridors. They moved swiftly, avoiding patrols and security drones. The stranger led them through hidden paths, navigating the labyrinth with ease. They reached a massive chamber, its ceiling stretching into darkness. At the center, a pedestal glowed with radiant energy. Mara's breath caught. The key. The artifact floated above the pedestal, spinning slowly. It was beautiful and terrifying, a sphere of shifting light and shadows. It pulsed with power, distorting the air around it. Tali whispered, "It looks alive." The stranger's voice was grave. "It is. It bends space and time, warping reality itself. That's why the Deathworlders want it. They plan to rewrite history, to erase every enemy they've ever known, including your world." Mara's fists clenched. We have to stop them. Before they could move, a voice echoed through the chamber. Cold and cruel. You're too late. From the shadows, a figure emerged. Tall and armored, his eyes burning with dark fire. A Deathworlder warlord. His presence radiated malice, his aura suffocating. The stranger stepped forward, weapon drawn. Sarthos, I should have known you survived. The warlord's lips curled into a wicked smile. You were always a fool, Arcanist. clinging to hope, to lost causes. But now you will watch your precious galaxy burn. He raised his hand, and the key of eternity flared with light. Reality rippled, the air vibrating with power. Mara felt a wave of nausea, her vision blurring. The chamber twisted, bending impossibly. Tali screamed, "What's happening?" The stranger's voice was urgent. "He's activating the key. He's rewriting time." Mara's heart pounded. If the warlord succeeded, everything would be undone. Their world, their history, would be erased. The stranger charged, their ancient weapon blazing with blue light. They moved like lightning, striking at the warlord with fury. But Sarthos was fast, his dark energy clashing with the Arcanist weapon. Sparks flew, reality distorting around them. Mara's instincts kicked in. She ran to the pedestal, her eyes locked on the key. If they could remove it, maybe they could stop the warlord's plan. Tali followed, fear replaced by determination. We can't let him win. They'd reached the pedestal, but an energy field blocked their path. Mara's fingers tingled as she touched it, pain shooting through her arm. The stranger's voice echoed, "Destroy the conduits. It will break the shield." Mara looked around, spotting glowing pillars around the chamber. She nodded at Tali. "You take the left, I'll take the right." They split up, dodging blasts of dark energy as the warlord fought the stranger. The air crackled with power, space warping dangerously. Mara reached the first conduit, pulling out her blaster. She fired, the energy pillar shattering in a burst of light. Across the chamber, Tali did the same, her face set with fierce determination. The shield around the key flickered, growing weaker. But the warlord noticed, his eyes blazing with fury. "You dare defy me." He sent a wave of dark energy at Mara, the force like a hurricane. She was thrown back, pain searing through her body. Her vision blurred, darkness closing in. But the stranger intercepted the attack, their energy shield flaring. "Your fight is with me, Sarthos." They clashed again, ancient light against dark power. The chamber shook, the key pulsing dangerously. Tali ran to Mara, helping her up. "Come on. One more to go." They reached the final conduit, firing together. It exploded, the shield shattering. The key of eternity wavered, its glow dimming. The warlord roared, his power flaring wildly. "No, this universe belongs to me." The stranger seized the moment, charging forward. They drove their weapon into the warlord's chest, light exploding around them. The darkness screamed, reality shattering. The key trembled, then burst into light. A wave of energy surged through the chamber, washing over everything. Mara closed her eyes, feeling time itself bend. When she opened them, the chamber was quiet. The warlord was gone, his presence erased. The key floated serenely, its light soft and warm. The stranger approached it, their face solemn. "It's over, for now. But the key is too powerful. It must be hidden, far from those who would abuse it." Mara nodded, understanding. "We'll help. We'll make sure no one ever finds it." The stranger looked at her, a spark of hope in their ancient eyes. "Then maybe there's still a future worth fighting for." They turned to leave, the chamber fading behind them. The battle was over, but the war had just begun.